Hello everybody. I continue our series of coping with COVID. We started these back in the summer. I was certainly dressed differently then than now. Today we're taping this on January 21st. It's a beautiful day, nice to be outside. So our topic today is, okay, you had your vaccine. Now you may not have had it yet, but just imagine you've had your vaccine. What now? Is it time to go hug the grandkids? Go have a party? Well, the answer, of course, is no. So the basic message today is simple. Even though you've had the vaccine, you have to keep the mask, got to keep social distance, got to keep washing your hands. And all the other things that we've been focused on for the last, getting close to a year now. So, all right, the vaccine. The vaccines, the two that are available from Pfizer and from Moderna, are actually very, very effective. So let's look at the charts. These are taken from the Food and Drug Administration's database that they use for making the emergency use authorization. So the first one is the Pfizer vaccine. And let's just take a moment to look at it. It starts off up in the bottom left corner is the time when the vaccine, the first dose was given. And then across the bottom is time in days. And then going up are cumulative cases of infection. And you can see right away, first of all, there's two groups. There's the placebo group in blue and the group that got vaccinated in red. Remember, this is double-blind, prospective. People didn't know whether they got the vaccine or not, and the person actually giving the jab didn't know either, because each vial was labeled in a way that you couldn't tell. All right, so what you can see, and it's pretty obvious, that the placebo group starts getting coronavirus infection. It just goes right up at a steady rate. But the vaccinated group, there's a few in the very beginning, and then it flattens right out. There's one more down toward the end there. So it doesn't take a lot of statistics to see the difference there. 95% effective. So some important points. Well, let's take this time out and let's look at the Moderna one as well. It looks very similar, except that the colors are different. In this case, the placebo is red, and the vaccinated group is blue. I hope I have that right. So you see the same thing though. The placebo group, cases accumulate as they go along, and the vaccinated group is very steady. So a number of really, really important points to take away from this. First is, again, it's 95% effective. Well, we'll come back to that point in a second, but 95% effective is really pretty impressive. Second thing is, of those who got infected, that very small number, it was always mild to moderate infection. Nobody ended up in the hospital, nobody died. Whereas in the placebo group, and not a lot, but some people ended up in the hospital. Now, I'm actually not certain if anybody died, but I think so. I haven't gone back to check that out. The third point, you got to be careful how you interpret this, but you'll notice that protection seemed to begin right around day 10 or so, maybe day 8 to 10. So even among the vaccinated group, there were some infections that developed, but then it flattened out very early. That's actually quite exciting news. You kind of wonder when these people got infected. Did some of them get infected actually before they got their shot? And then it just, the infection showed up just afterward? Whatever, after about 8 to 10 days, no more, well, except for that one way out, no more infections. Now, don't misunderstand that. That doesn't mean you shouldn't get the second shot. The reason for the second shot is absolutely critical for a variety of reasons. One is that the early studies of these vaccines showed that in order to get an adequate rise of antibody that persisted, you needed that second shot. So be sure you get your second shot. Don't feel like, oh, I looked at the graph, I don't need a second shot. No, you need the second shot. Absolutely. So 95% effective. That is actually incredible. There's very, very few vaccines that we've got today that are that effective. the flu vaccine doesn't begin to be that good. Some years it's only about 50% effective. Most years a little bit better than that. But, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't get the flu vaccine each year either, but it does say that this particular two vaccines are just terrific. Remember back last summer, the Food and Drug Administration said, okay, companies, when you bring us a vaccine, you got your trial data, it's got to be at least 50% effective. So they were willing, actually, if all else was okay, to grant emergency use authorization if it was at least 50% effective. But this is 95%. Did people hope it would be this good? Yeah. Did they dream it would be this good? Yes. Did they actually think it might be this good? Maybe. We'll see. But it's really very, very effective. So that's impressive. The other thing is it's safe. And I know I've heard even some from friends who say, I don't know, it went through the FDA so fast. I don't trust the government anyway. And the studies just were, over 9 months or so. That's awful fast. When in the past it's always taken 4 or 5 years to study these sorts of things, a new vaccine. So I'm just not sure. And besides, what if there's a bad side effect or safety issue that comes up, months and months down the road? So the answer to that question is at least this, that what the Food and Drug Administration, the pharmaceutical industry, has learned over the years is if there's going to be an adverse event, it's going to occur in the first couple of months. And that's why they said that they wouldn't grant emergency use authorization until there had been at least 2 months of observation of the people in the trial. And just to add to that, between these two trials, a little over 35,000 individuals, volunteers, got the vaccine, an equal number got the placebo. So among those who got the vaccine, there have been no safety issues. Now, remember, I'm sure you've read this, that in England, when the Pfizer vaccine first started being used, there were 2 people who developed a severe allergic reaction. But those 2 people had pre-existing, they knew that they were susceptible to allergic phenomenon, and they actually had their EpiPens with them. So there have been some more people like that, but it's very few. I actually looked up the numbers recently, and it's only been about 17 people out of the millions of people now that have had the vaccine. So it is a very uncommon thing. And again, it's people who have a known serious allergy. So for 99.9% of the population, probably 99.99%, that's not an issue. But still, whenever the vaccine's given, they have an observation for 15 minutes just to be sure. And if that's going to happen, by the way, it happens in just moments. So that 15-minute observation period is plenty. So those are the 2 vaccines we've got. There's a couple more on the road, and they certainly are effective. They certainly are safe. You all know the name, and you've seen his picture many, many times, Dr. Anthony Fauci. He and 3 of his colleagues just wrote a paper January 19th in the Annals of Internal Medicine reviewing these 2 vaccines. And what they said in there was, and I just want to get the words exact, safety and efficacy are extraordinarily encouraging, I think that's, coming from them, that's very positive. Now, a few cautions. 95% effective also means that 5% still got the infection. I'll change that to some other numbers. That means 1 in 20 got infected. Well, that's actually not the right way to say it, but you get the point. You can still get infected if you've had the vaccine. Remember, it's circulating in the community, and you can give it to me, I can give it to you, somebody can give it to somebody, and frequently we know that this tends to be passed by asymptomatic people through just breathing through the air, especially in crowded places with limited air circulation. So it's important to remember that. Big question is, how long will immunity last? You know, they just started doing this last summer, so it's only 6 months or so that we've got data on as to how long the immunity will last. So far, it looks good. So far, it looks good. But that doesn't say 6 months from now that the people who got vaccinated last summer will still be as protected as they are now. You know, will there be a need for a follow-up shot someday? That's just not clear. It's unknown. I should add on though, those people that were in those big studies, the 35,000, they're being followed to find out exactly what happens to their antibody level and to see if also among the vaccinated ones, if some develop infection later. Now, the virus is still circulating in the community. We know that. A limited number of people have been vaccinated. If you're one of the ones who have been, as I said in the beginning, you can feel pretty excited about it, but it's still out there, it's still circulating. And because it's still circulating, we all have to keep the mask on and do what we need to do. The unvaccinated people can certainly still transmit it, can still spread it. And again, often you don't know who that person is because either they're asymptomatic or it's before their symptoms develop. It doesn't require coughing, sneezing, it's just breathing in a fairly confined space. So, the other point about this is, can a vaccinated person still get infected, not get sick, but get infected and therefore transmit the virus? That's a big unknown. It's just simply not known yet. So it is possible. I don't think it's terribly likely, but it could be. And again, the experts like Dr. Fauci are saying it's very much a possibility that even though you're vaccinated, even though you may not develop a significant infection, a lot of symptoms, you still may be infected and able to transmit the virus to other people. So you put all these together, we need to wear a mask. We need to social distance. We need to keep washing our hands. We need to watch out that we don't get into a crowded elevator, or any other crowded space, because we know that's the wonderful place to transmit and circulate the virus. And it can even be there after somebody who was infected and transmitting got off and it's still in there. Another thing to think about is that there are variants, viral variants out there. And so far, the vaccines are believed to be perfectly adequate against those variants. But we never know that another variant can pop up and the vaccine may not be effective. So time will only tell that. The best thing, of course, is if get the vaccines out, get a large number of people vaccinated so that it stops the circulation, stops the spread of it in the community, then those variants just won't, they won't pass on, and it'll just sort of halt the whole thing. Well, I think it's just simple. What's the bottom line? What's the bottom line? We got to keep at this. Even though if you've been vaccinated, even if you've had double dose, the second dose, and it's been 2 weeks, keep your mask on, keep the social distance, keep the hand washing. We've been doing it for all this period of time. We can keep doing it. It's not that hard. Yeah, we're all frustrated, don't like it, but you can feel a lot more secure anyway that you've been vaccinated when the time comes, and that cuts down your risk dramatically. But just for your own benefit and everybody else's benefit, until the answers to these questions are known about can we be infected and transmit even though we've been vaccinated? Do we have to worry about variants? Do we know how long the immunity lasts? Until some of those questions are answered, got to stay with it. So that's the advice for today. I think it's important actually, and encourage you to be vigilant. Thank you very much.